Hello everyone, it's Ranger at 64, and welcome back to another League of Legends lore reading video. Today, we will be reading the biography of Pantheon, the Unbreakable Spear. Here is my eternity, a day the gods will remember. Once, an unwilling host to the aspect of war, Atreus survived when the celestial power within him was slain, refusing to succumb to a blow that tore stars from the heavens. In time, he learned to embrace the power of his own ability and his own mortality, and the stubborn resilience that goes along with it. Atreus now opposes the divine as Pantheon reborn, his unbreakable will fueling the fallen aspect's weapons on the field of battle. Atreus was born on the hostile slopes of Targon and named after a star in the constellation of war known as Pantheon. From an early age, he knew he was destined for battle. Like many of his tribe, he trained to join the Rakor's militant order. The Rakoraks, never the strongest or the most skilled warrior, Atreus somehow persevered, standing up, bloodied and bruised after each bout. Each time, and in time, he developed a fierce rivalry with a fellow recruit, Hylas. But no matter how often Atreus was cast onto the stones, he stood back up. Hylas was impressed by his unrelenting endurance, and through the bloody day spilled in the training circle, a true brotherhood was formed. Atreus and Pylus were among the Rakor who stumbled across a barbarian insurgent, surviving the ambush that left the rest of their patrol dead. When the aspect of the sun refused to destroy these trespassers, Atreus and Pylus swore to capture the power of the aspects themselves by climbing to the peak of Mount Targon. Like so many before them, they underestimated how odorous the ascent would be, with Pylus shivering his last upon finally reaching his limit. And finally, they reached the summit. Only Atreus remained as the skies opened, making him host to a divine aspect, with the power to take revenge. But it was not a man who returned to the Rakor, spear and shield gleaming with celestial might. It was the aspect of war himself, the Pantheon, judging Atreus unworthy, a warrior who had known only defeat. It had taken control of his body to pursue its own ends, a task it considered too great for a mortal man. Cast into the furthest corners of his own mind, Atreus endured only vague visions as the aspects scoured the world for Darkin, living weapons created in a bygone age. Eventually, Pantheon was goaded into battle not far from Mount Targon by the darkened Aatrox, who sought the mountain's peak. Their fight raged into the skies and swept through the armies of men beneath, until the impossible occurred. The Darkin's god-killing blade was driven into Pantheon's chest, a blow that carved the constellation of war from the heavens. But as the aspect faded, Atreus, the man it had considered weak, awoke once more. Impaled upon Aatrox's blade, and with the power of the aspect's weapons dimming, he took a rage breath and spit in Darkin's face. Aatrox sneered and left Atreus to die. Hours later, as the crows descended, Atreus painfully stood back up, stumbling back to the Rakor in a trail of blood. After a lifetime of defeat, his will to live and his anger at betrayal were enough to stave off the death that had claimed the war itself. Atreus recovered on Pylus' homestead, nursing back to health by his friend's widow, Lula. There, Atreus realized he'd spent his life looking to the stars, never considering what lay beneath. Unlike gods, mortals fought because they must, knowing that death lay in wait. It was a resilience he saw in all life, and threats unending. Indeed, barbarian invaders now threatened the Rakor's northern settlements, including Ilua's farm, though it was months before he could lift a spear. Atreus was determined to end this scourge himself, and eventually set out with the Aspect's dual weapons in hand. Yet, when he arrived, he found his sworn enemies already under siege. He knew from their sires and cries, from the overwhelming stench of blood, they faced Aatrox. It was Aatrox who had driven the barbarians into Targon. Atreus realized, though he'd considered them as his foes, they were much like the Rakor, mortals who suffered in the conflicts between greater powers. Atreus felt a cold rage at both the Darkin and the Aspects. They were no different. They were the problems. Atreus put himself between the barbarians and Aatrox. Recognizing the battered shield and spear of the fallen Aspect, the Darkin mocked him. What hope had Atreus now, without the Pantheon's power? But even though Aatrox's blow cast him to his knees, Atreus' own will resisted the Aspect's spear. Upon hearing the cries of the people around him, and with a mighty leap, he struck a blow at the Darkin that severed his sword's arm. Both blade and the Darkin fell to the ground. Only Atreus still stood, and watched his namesake star blaze back to life in the heavens. Though he often yearns to return to Ilua's farm, Atreus vowed that day to stand against the Aspects, Ascendants, demons, and any who wielded power so great it can only destroy. Forsakening his own name, he has become a new Pantheon, the Aspect's weapon fueled by the will to fight that can only exist in the face of death. For with the divine Pantheon gone, war must be reborn in man.